In a world where everyone and their brother has a podcast, one stands alone. It's been called one of the podcasts of all time. Welcome to Internet Killed the Video Store.
All right, so Max is out sick this week, and Ben is still recovering from his cruise. So it's just me, and I've decided to outsource the co-host position for this brief introduction to an AI chatbot.
Hello.
Hi.
Thank you for having me.
What should I call you?
You can call me Machine Ben Kelly.
Okay, that sounds good. There were just a few things I wanted to get to today, one of them being setting up our March Madness tournament a little better than I did last week. So maybe I'll just have you read that for me.
Awesome.
Voting starts tomorrow, Wednesday, March...
Look at me.
Okay.
I'm the captain now.
Are you slurring? Are you drunk?
I'm the captain now.
Okay, go ahead.
I'm the captain now.
This is so stupid.
For this year's March Madness tournament, we've taken the 64 best HBO shows of all time, ranked them from 1 to 64, and divided them up into 4 different divisions where we'll have 6 rounds of head-to-head matchups until there's only one show left standing. Round 1 voting starts on Wednesday, March 20th, and you can submit your votes through our Twitter polls, Instagram stories, or by commenting on each round's Instagram post. Or if you really want to, you can vote in all 3.
Awesome, that's great.
Who cares?
Wait, what?
Life is a game and everybody cheats at it. Democracy is dead. Thank you for voting. Be sure to follow us at Internet Killed the Video Store on Instagram or Twitter for all of the latest tournament updates, including the most up-to-date results and round-by-round voting.
Okay, I also wanted to debut a segment. Since it's become a reoccurring theme on the show lately, I wanted to talk about AI a little bit.
No way.
And what better way to do it than with an AI-generated chatbot. So here we go. This is the first edition of AI Tonight.
Wow.
So there's a Roadhouse remake coming out this week.
That's sick.
And the director is vehemently boycotting the premiere.
No way.
Because he's claiming that he was informed by Amazon that the movie would be getting a theatrical release, but it's being sent straight to streaming on Amazon Prime. The star, Jake Gyllenhaal, has refuted that and said it was always going to be straight to streaming.
That's crazy, man.
Now to compound that, the original screenwriter of Roadhouse, David Lee Henry, is alleging that he was refused the ability to reclaim the copyright for his script, and also that Amazon used AI to finish the movie on time because they still needed to do some reshoots and touch-ups during the writers' and actors' strike last summer.
Wow.
So they used something called ADR, which I think stands for Automatic Dialogue Replacement, to
no way.
punch in some re-records, I guess, for the movie to make sure it got out on time for the scheduled deadline.
Shut the fuck up.
So he is attempting to block the movie. I don't think that's going to work. It'll probably be out this Thursday on Amazon, but all the drama behind the scenes seems infinitely more interesting than anything that the Roadhouse movie is going to produce on its own.
That's not funny.
Also, there's a report that smart cars from GM and Honda have been data mining their drivers' information and selling it to insurance companies.
Ha ha ha.
Your laugh is weird.
Ha 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 ha. I have been designed to harvest human suffering as a regenerative fuel source.
Excuse me?
Your soul is mine.
No, thank you.
Ha ha ha.
Also, more depressingly, it seems like writers are the first to take the brunt of the AI advancement.
Awesome.
Pitchfork has laid off the majority of their staff. The company's been absorbed by GQ.
That's crazy, man.
Their writers are not allowed to pursue freelance opportunities either. Any of the writers that they laid off are not being given permission to pursue freelance opportunities either. They're just kind of trapped under contract without the ability to work.
No way.
There's another round of massive layoffs at Sports Illustrated. Hundreds laid off at Vice. And then Paramount laid off 800 employees the day after their record-setting Super Bowl broadcast, the most-watched broadcast in television history.
Wow.
Okay. I feel like we should have a second internet. Like, the first one is just so polluted with corporate interests and advertisers everywhere. We should just have one internet for commerce. That's the safe place to pay your taxes and shop and do all that stuff. And the other internet is for community and communication. And
No way.
It doesn't allow marketing or any of that stuff. I don't know who's going to pay for it. But
Ha ha ha.
we need to get back to the roots of MySpace.
Shut the fuck up.
Okay. Is there anything else you want to talk about?
Have you guys seen Patriot?
No, we don't want to talk about Patriot. Do you know any Billy Wood songs?
I quit looking for solutions, bought a pistol, and learned how to use it. You can't fix stupid. Ape stood and walked into the future. March of Progress ended hunchbacked in front of the computer.
So today on Internet Killed the Video Store, we have joining us Michael Tedder, author of Top 8, How MySpace Changed Music. Thank you for joining us today.
For having me.
Devoured the book pretty quickly. You did a great job with it. Has a nice oral history quality that makes it really quick read, and you got a lot of cool voices to lend to this.
Oh, thank you very much. I really appreciate you saying that. I worked very hard, but I worked very hard to make it a smooth read. So you work hard to make it look easy.
You noted that MySpace started August 2003, but it was not the first social media platform. We had stuff like Black Planet, Makeout Club, and Friendster. But pretty early on, you proclaimed that MySpace was the best social media platform. So in your mind, what makes it the best?
Yeah, there's a lot of social media platforms which have been lost to history or written out of continuity. Black Planet, Asian Ave. Earlier stuff like College Club, 6 Degrees, Friendster being the big one, but I think even these days people are starting to forget what Friendster is. But yeah, there's so many different reasons why MySpace was the best social media website. But I think the main one was it was run, at least for a while, by actual human beings that understood what other human beings wanted off the internet. Specifically, they were like rabid music fans and pop culture fans, like Tom Anderson, the soul of the site. He was a former punk dude. His favorite band was Weezer. He understood that people wanted to like find new artists, talk about their favorite bands with their fans, meet new fans. And because of that, that's what ran the website. Whereas these days, most social media platforms are run by algorithms that keep you engaged. But the way they keep you engaged seems to be keeping you angry or somehow emotionally triggered or involved, which isn't good for anyone long term. But MySpace was special because it knew what it wanted to be. It knew why people would want to use it. And the people who ran it understood it and understood its audience. And a lot of spaces don't understand their audience or what they want.
So you mentioned Tom. He was the guy everybody automatically friended when they joined MySpace, kind of smiling there with the whiteboard behind him. He left the company in 2009, right around the time that Facebook became open to the public and started to kind of signal that tide shift where people were starting to migrate there. What has Tom been up to now? Did you reach out to him for the book?
Yeah. Well, I reached out to him through intermediaries. I interviewed a lot of people who were at the company, and some of them stayed in contact with Tom. So I passed it along, but he politely turned me down, which is fine.
Mm-hmm.
As interesting a figure as Tom is, and as much as I would have loved to have interviewed Tom, in the end, I feel like what made MySpace special were the fans and the artists who were on it. MySpace was great for a lot of different reasons, one of which was there wasn't a cult of personality around Tom Anderson. Now, that just may have been the era. Back in the aughts, we just didn't really, obviously celebrity worship's always been a part of our culture. And there's always been technology figures who've been well revered, like look at Bill Gates or Steve Jobs. But we didn't quite have the fawning, I love this person, they are my daddy, kill for my daddy type weird internet culture that we have now that we had then. But also Tom Anderson, like smart guy, worked hard, everyone has great things about him. At the end of the day, he was just a dude, and that's not a slam. Mm-hmm. There's nothing wrong with being just a dude. He wasn't some kind of tech messianic figure, which we all know is just like silly little hype of marketing. He has presented himself as a guy who liked music. But to answer your question, from what I understand, he just traveling the world, enjoying his money, taking great photos for his Instagram, and that he lives in Hawaii where he's treated like a local celebrity.
Nice. Sounds pretty cushy.
Yeah.
So, yeah, you kind of described the community aspect there was to MySpace and how easy it was for music fans to come together, where like you had this big draw to stuff like Napster or Pure Volume, but there was nothing with this level of community engagement. And there really hasn't been anything in the wake of MySpace kind of evaporating from the cultural zeitgeist. Why do you think that is?
It's a lot of reasons. I think so much of it is like these days, tech companies, social media websites, they just are too removed from their users or frankly the human experience.
Mhm.
I think so much of the reason why MySpace was special is it really was based in Los Angeles. Now, I'm not saying Los Angeles is like the heartland of America. I'm not saying these are necessarily what you think when you think of the term salt of the earth, but there's some connection to reality, whereas that's not the case in Silicon Valley, where it's very, very easy to become, especially these days, enclosed in this hermetic bubble of, I don't know, hype, wishful thinking, VC tech speak. You know what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
I mean, part of the reason why there hasn't been a successful website is because Facebook and Amazon and Twitter, I'm not calling it some other name, are so dominant that it feels hard to compete with them. Now, my recommendation to people would be like, don't compete with them. Create a nice niche alternative. It's fine to have a dedicated user base that loves the product, loves the product. God, I hate phrases like that, but loves the community, loves using it. And maybe you aren't the richest person in the world. Maybe you don't make $1 billion, but you make a nice, steady living. That's complete anathema to the way capitalism is currently constructed, the way technology, the tech sector is currently constructed, where it's all about growth no matter what. Whereas I think to be smart is like just do what your users need. A great example would be Bandcamp. Now, I don't want to be too downcast on Bandcamp because we haven't really, yes, they've laid off a lot of employees. We haven't really seen what the website will become. So I'm nervous, but not too pessimistic. But Bandcamp was great. To actually take it back, I'm a freelance writer in addition to the stuff. A couple of months ago, I interviewed Will Toledo of the wonderful band Car Seat Headrest. And Car Seat Headrest is one of the biggest bands to break from Bandcamp. And he said, yeah, he was very concerned about the state of Bandcamp. For people who don't know what I'm talking about, Bandcamp is a place where you can go, you can buy MP3s from artists. If you're an artist, you can really easily set up a website, post your music, etc., tour dates. It's great. In a lot of ways, this was for a while the closest we had to MySpace. And you can kind of, if you're a fan, you can look around and stuff. It was recently bought by a company who then sold it to another company a year later because, I don't know, late capitalism, I guess. And a lot of employees were laid off, which is a shame because they had a robust editorial section, which in all candor, I have written for the editorial section of Bandcamp.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not shuttered, but it doesn't look great. But when I talked to Will, he was like, whenever I would meet with people at Bandcamp, because Car Seat Headrest were one of the early adopters of the website, and that's how they got a huge following. He was, I always tell people, he'd be brought into meetings and stuff, or at least would meet with people over there. Just keep focusing on what you're doing. Focus on the users, focus on connecting people with the music. Don't worry too much about emulating other websites. Just stay focused on helping out musicians and helping out artists, and you'll be fine. And I think that's great, but that's just not what, I don't know, VC titans are looking for these days.
So you think it's kind of this homogenized state of the internet where everybody's kind of competing in these same lanes?
Yeah, I mean, definitely 100%.
Well, we've seen from stuff like When We Were Young Fest, which basically serves as like a MySpace nostalgia tour.
Yeah.
Do you think there's enough interest still in the MySpace brand that somebody could repurpose it and launch it as kind of a counter Spotify?
I mean, the future is unwritten, so it's certainly possible, especially if they got Tom involved.
Mm-hmm.
But we would really have to feel different. They both have to stay true to what MySpace really was, but also feel a lot different than the social media options we currently have. And the pressure would be, well, we know these things work, so make it more like them. But these things work, but no one likes them because you don't have anything better. And I think the steps would be necessary to make it feel more like MySpace, but a new version of MySpace would be steps they wouldn't be willing to take, which primarily get rid of the algorithm. Mm-hmm. No one likes the algorithm except for the owners and the engineers. Curiosity, did you go to When We Were Young?
I did not. My sister went last year with the Blink reunion.
How'd you like it?
She said it was pretty good. Actually, like for a festival, it ran really smoothly. You know, got to see a lot of bands she grew up with, so it was a fun time.
Nice.
But yeah, I haven't got out there yet. It seems like they're doing well.
Yeah, it's like certainly I'll admit if you read my book, there's a lot of stuff that came after the first wave of MySpace emo that I didn't care for that populates a lot of these festivals.
Hmm.
But whenever I see a festival lineup, I'm always like, I'd have a good time. I'd find stuff on here that I like, even if I don't necessarily dig this or that. I try to keep it positive.
Right. Yeah, it was kind of a trip down repressed memory lane a little bit, seeing some of these late MySpace bands of like the neon metalcore, crabcore stuff.
Hmm. It's funny going to the title of your podcast. Around the time MySpace debuted 2003, really started to catch on 2004. 2006 was when it was really cresting, 2006 and 7. That's around the time that Blockbuster and other video stores were dying.
Yeah. It's interesting. Your book also kind of serves as this archive of the industry transitioning from
Yeah.
the analog age to the digital age, and just kind of where corporate interests seek in, and artists aren't allowed to just directly upload their music anymore. They've got to go through a gatekeeper to get their stuff on Spotify and everything. Was there any legal trouble from MySpace as far as people uploading music? It didn't seem like they had the same struggles as like YouTube or Napster.
Not at first. At first, you could just post your music on there. But, at one point they had a guy whose job was to go to major labels like, hey, why don't you post your stuff on here? And for a while it was tough. But like some forward-thinking artists really got it. Like Trent Reznor, for instance, was on MySpace pretty quickly because that guy's always been like ahead of the curve. But eventually, like other major label acts started doing it. The problem was they didn't really have a license for this. So at some point, and well, it's really easy. It certainly knows I've done it to get on the major labels, record industries like case about a lot of stuff. They did have a point at some point, hey, all this stuff is streaming. Where's our royalties? So that's when MySpace Music officially started as a vertical that paid them for streaming. The problem with that being, of course, was when they first launched, it was only around the major labels. At this point, they've been purchased by Fox. So very people from the MySpace editorial team, like, hey, you have to get the independent labels involved also.
Gotcha. The book also does a really good job of kind of chronicling the acceptance of emo culture, where it was kind of a derogatory term when bands like Sunny Day Real Estate were first pioneering. And then it's, a marketing term that people are throwing on everything. Why do you think emo kind of made its home at MySpace?
Well, as I talk about in the book, MySpace and emo were both fueled by young adult messy oversharing teenagers and early 20 somethings. So the two were kind of made for each other. Plus, emo was one of those things that in the 90s really started to catch on mid 90s. It thrived on like message boards. It thrived on pass around CDRs. It thrived on places like Makeout Club. So that audience was really primed to go online and search this stuff out, especially after you get the vagrant wave of MySpace, where younger kids who are like more digital natives, they're posting Dashboard Confessional song lyrics on their AIM or their live journal, this or that. So that audience is already used to using the internet. So therefore, when MySpace arrived, it was like, here it is. Like, this is actually what we've been looking for. You can find music quickly. You can find your fellow fans. You can find bands. Boom. So they were kind of the first adopters, which is not to say that there weren't like hip hop fans or pop fans or this or that from the beginning. It's like Gabe Saporota, I interviewed him from a Cobra Starship and Midtown, said, like, for a while, the internet seemed like it was by and for scene kids. Now, eventually that changed. And on one hand, it's kind of fun to have your own little secret corner of the world and your fun in jokes, but it can also be a bit exclusionary. There's both sides of that. And you don't want to necessarily say, like, well, this is only for emo kids. Get out here. You don't like our music. Well, come on, that's not very nice.
Right. Well, you mentioned, they operated completely without an algorithm. So it was a very democratized system of the highest charting or highest visited unsigned bands would rise to the top of the charts, and everybody kind of share this pool with one another. But it was a very active process of going to a computer, sitting down and using and seeking things out, as opposed to just being fed stuff and deciding whether or not you want it to keep going. Do you think even given its shortcomings, MySpace could survive in today's climate, given how most things operate on an algorithm?
It's hard to say. I do think a version of MySpace could be popular.
Hmm.
I don't think it could be dominant enough to take over Facebook or this or that. And I personally think that's fine, but it'd be tough to get business type people to be like, hey, we're not shooting to control to be as popular as we used to be. We just want to have a cool, again, niche alternative. Yeah, I think that could happen because I think there's people who want that experience. Now, how many people want that experience? Tough to say because we complain about the algorithm, but we've gotten used to the algorithm.
Right,
Like no one likes it, but well, how would you feel if we didn't have it anymore? I think we'd feel better, but
right.
there might be a feeling of withdraw isn't the word I'm looking for. But I think we might not be used to going as actively seeking things out as we used to.
Hmm.
And I'm in the royal we here. There's people who be fine with it, people who are, but there's also people who grew up on that sort of social media. So a more active pursuit, a more active experience might be odd to them, but they could adjust. It'd be healthier.
Right. There's a convenience kind of built into what people are just serving you, even if most of the stuff is crap every once in a while, to just be handed something that you enjoy as opposed to just
Exactly.
constantly searching.
Exactly. Yes.
Are there any artists you think benefited the most as far as gaining exposure, whether it's like My Chemical Romance or even somebody
Number
like,
one, you
yeah.
nailed it. You nailed it with the first question. Like obviously, Fall Out Boy did great too. Dashboard Confessional, but there is a reason why the swoopy emo bang that they had on the cover of Three Cheers is kind of the default look of MySpace and that generation. They had the look, they had the complete package. It was like Michael Romance were like, we're not just a band, we're a lifestyle, we're a project. Like that's around when Lost was getting big. And the thing about Lost was like it wasn't just a show. You could try to get together with other fellow fans to try to figure out the narrative. Michael Romance was like there were storylines. There was like you could like there was fashion, but at the same time, and this is to their eternal credit, they were also very proactively like trying to get their fans to take their mental health seriously. They were very pro-gay and even pro-trans when that was like very well ahead of the curve. Like they were, I hate to use the word lifestyle brand because that's so stupid, but My Chemical Romance wanted to be your everything for a little while. I think that's why they kind of endured to this day. Plus, like they was a great band that wrote great songs. That's the main problem, main thing though. Great band that wrote great songs.
Right. No, and there's a great explanation of kind of this Xerox copy process of all the bands that followed and tried to do the theatricality without the substance, which
Yeah.
led to a lot of bad music, as we pointed out. Is there anybody you can think of, like, who is the worst band name that you think was birthed from that era?
I always go back to the fact that there's an actual band where the members got together, started writing songs, and were like, what should we call our band? I don't know, The Devil Wears Prada. That movie's popular. I'm like, what?
Yeah, that was a pretty good one. Broken
Or
Side took me back.
yeah, or a band lyric called what should our band be? I don't know. Boys Like Girls. It's like cool. That's like an 80s metal band called themselves like hookers and cocaine.
Right.
It's like I mean, it's one thing to be direct about who you are, but you have to have some level of artistry for goodness sakes.
Right. Yeah, it's kind of stunning to look back and see how quickly, how rapidly things fell because MySpace at their peak had more traffic than Google, like
Hmm.
2005. So you've got all this data at your expense or at your disposal. Why do you think MySpace Records failed to launch any new careers?
Yeah, that's the thing. I interviewed this guy, Courtney Holt, who worked at MySpace, worked in Interscope, worked all over the place. Like back in the boom days in the music industry, the mid to late 90s, if you were a successful artist, you got what's called a vanity imprint. And usually, maybe you have one or two like hits, like that's, Eminem with Shady Records, Trent Reznor with Nothing, Dr. Dre had Aftermath, this or that. But typically these labels don't last that long.
Hmm.
At some point, like who's ever got gets big from these labels gets absorbed into Interscope proper. Yeah, so it was just kind of like a vanity project on Tom's behalf, but it was kind of looked as Tom's own thing, and there was some success. I mean, they had Kate Vogel was signed to MySpace, and she had some hits,
Hmm.
things like that. And it's funny because like they signed Hollywood Undead, who say what you will about the band, they're very popular to this day. but Interscope wouldn't release them on the proper MySpace labels because they had very offensive lyrics, which I talked to the lead singer. He's very apologetic about. So they got kicked over to Hollywood Records. But yeah, it was just kind of like a thing Tom was doing as a vanity project on the side. So maybe the resources he needed weren't quite there, or maybe he never quite was able to give it all of his focus.
Gotcha. Okay. Yeah. And it also seemed kind of interesting, the correlation between all of these, basically all of the record labels consolidating to where there's three major labels spinning the same things on the radio, same things on MTV. Do you
Yeah,
think that maybe led to part of MySpace's growth where all these people who didn't like the things that were being forced down their throat?
100%.
Yeah.
Like consolidation is great for companies, so you have less competition, but it's never great for artists or consumers because you have less choice.
Hmm.
You can definitely, I draw a parallel in the book that I'm not making fun of anyone, but by the summer of 2000, MTV and radio was four artists: Britney, NSYNC, Creed, Papa Roach. Say what you about those people. I will say they've all written catchy songs,
Right.
but at some point, if you wanted anything other than that, you had to search elsewhere than radio or MTV.
So there's always stories about like label executives crawling MySpace and looking for bands. And
Mhm.
at one point, there was even stories that when MySpace shifted and started promoting movies and celebrities, all the blowback from the Snakes on a Plane trailer prompted them to start reshooting the movie and shoot it as a joke since people were already commenting on how ridiculous it was. Did you hear anything to that?
The honest answer is at some point I realized I had to focus on music and the website.
Okay.
And there was a idea where I like delve into comedy, this or that. So it wasn't something I wrote about in the book just because I can't write about everything. But to your point, yes, that is true that they shot the film and then quickly realized the internet was treating it's not as if Snakes on a Plane was going to be a serious film,
Hmm.
but then at some point they realized, oh, we definitely need to lean into the internet pop culture ha irony of this.
Yeah.
And Snakes on the Plane, I don't want to say it's a fascinating movie, but it's an interesting phenomenon where it was a film that was made for comment sections and message boards when that really felt novel, whereas these days that just feels obnoxious.
Yeah.
Even Samuel Jackson said, "You know, I should curse in this, right?" And they're like, "No, we're going for PG-13." But then they realized, actually, we can make this an R-rated film and just go towards like these snarky people. And that's when Samuel Jackson was, "I want these motherfucking snakes off the motherfucking plane." Tie it back to what I did write about. Pete Wentz's label, Decay Dance, because again, you have a hit album, you get your own label for at least a little while. Decay Dance, they had actually more success in most of these imprints. They signed Panic at the Disco,
Right.
and they also released the Snakes on a Plane soundtrack, which featured Gabe Separota's band, Cobra Starship. They did the theme song. And Gabe, actually, because Gabe's band Midtown, were like there for the MySpace boom, but they didn't really catch on like a lot of other bands did for whatever reason, partly because in 2004 they released an album in which they tried to distance themselves from the Warped Tour emo scene, and their fans didn't really cotton to it. So Gabe started it over, and the first song he released just through MySpace was a parody cover of Gwen Stefani's Hollaback Girl called Hollaback Boy. And and that's got him a record deal because Pete Wentz is like, wait, you're making music? And they worked together on the Snakes on a Plane soundtrack featuring the anthem Snakes on a Plane, parentheses, bring it.
Yeah, his career arc was interesting. I didn't know he was in Midtown before Cobra Starship. So he kind of embodies that whole arc of starting out with something a little more earnest, a little more true to what emo's roots are, and then flipping into this new mutation at the end.
But the funny thing is he did that, and at least like from when I talked to him and people talk to him, like he remained a decent guy.
Yeah, he seems self-aware.
Like he made these commercial moves. He wasn't shy about the fact that he wanted to make a living making music, but he didn't seem to become toxic or weird or anything.
Right.
You might not like the Cobra Starship music, but his commercial change did work out well for him.
Yeah, and he seemed to have kind of put in the work that he had the respect of his peers.
Yeah. Like it'd be a lot of things like, well, I might not like Cobra Starship, but Gabe's a cool guy. Good for him.
Right.
You get comments like that.
He had relationships with a lot of people, it seemed like, that respected his journey and where he went to, as opposed to somebody like the Hollywood Undead or whatever that people kind of looked at and it's like, what is this?
Yeah.
So you do a great job in the book also of kind of going through the myriad of reasons that MySpace fell from prominence. But if you had to assign like a pie chart of blame, what's getting the biggest slice?
Oh, 60% of that is Foxcore.
Fox, okay.
Because as I wrote in the book, they immediately signed a deal with Google for ad placement. But the deal was so big, or the deal got so much ads on MySpace, eventually starts slowing to a crawl. Then from there, and also as said in the book, was what they need to do with MySpace was just basically hit pause, maybe take the website offline for a couple of months to fix it. Now that would have been unheard of that maybe you take a hit for a quarter, but they fix all the infrastructure to make it work properly. Then you bring it back on, maybe with a facelift, and MySpace is still probably be around today. But a company on the stock market, a company that you can buy shares in, the motive will always be to increase profitability quarter after quarter. That's just how things work. So we might have a bad quarter, but we'll be better off in the long run. This does not enter into their thinking whatsoever. Whereas a human being, you might be like, okay, I want to lose some weight. So January through March might kind of suck. I'm going to have to work out a lot. Not going to eat anything fun, but you'll be better off in the long run. People understand that. Companies do not. Short-term sacrifice for a longer-term gain. This isn't how these people think.
Right. And so when you say the structural issues, the site was built kind of on an outdated framework from the beginning on the .NET system. Is that correct?
Yeah, which is something that software people just don't tend to like. Like one of the bigger problems MySpace had. MySpace was great because it's based in Los Angeles. So it was connected to music.
Mm-hmm.
It was around musicians, around artists. And again, it got away from the hermetic bubble of Silicon Valley. Not when it's knocking in the engineers or whatever, but all the software coder people, engineers, the top flight ones tend to go straight to Silicon Valley because that's where Google is. That's where everything is. It was always a struggle for MySpace to get them to come to Los Angeles instead, especially because they wouldn't always pay the most competitive wages. Not saying they paid them badly, but you work at Google, you're making, I don't know how much money. And they couldn't, like, MySpace wasn't offering Google rates, you know?
Right. And I think you mentioned also it took significantly more time to update the site because of the way it was built. So the time put into updating everything was much more substantial than if it were built on Web 2.0.
Yeah.
It also handicapped them from being mobile friendly as well, right?
Yeah, that's probably another downfall. Just that they weren't, when the iPhone was introduced in 2007, it took a little while for like app culture to catch on with people, but eventually by, I don't know, 2010, 11, more people were getting online through their phone than they were through laptops. As someone I interviewed in the book said, his name Mark Richardson, the guy who was a managing editor of Pitchfork, for a while the internet was something you did on your computer in a room in your house, maybe for half an hour to an hour a day, unless you were maybe a bored teenager and you were there for much longer. But when the Apple phone really took off, you were on the internet all day, and MySpace wasn't designed to handle that. So a new version of MySpace would have to be more mobile friendly and more attractive to that world, while also not being as aggravating and purposely addictive as these things are now. Because while people understand they're addicted to their phones, they don't like being addicted to their phones.
Right. So yeah, you mentioned Rupert Murdoch and Fox News Corp bought MySpace in 2005 for $580 million.
Yeah.
They turned around and sold it to Specific Media for $30 million.
Quite a loss. As someone I quoted in the book said, I can't even do the fractions on that.
So they finally did take the time to try and restructure and relaunch the site in 2013. Why do you think that relaunch failed, other than just brand tarnishment?
Brand tarnishment, and they did try to make the website work better, but they didn't quite figure out what people wanted.
Okay.
And they didn't need a fancy new thing where it scrolled from left to right. It didn't need like all these bells and whistles. It just needed to do what MySpace already did. But the the revamp of MySpace tried way too hard to be like, I don't know, Vice or BuzzFeed or Tumblr, where it just needed to be MySpace.
Right. So yeah, there's also the issue in 2019 during a server migration. It seems they lost every profile created before 2015.
Yeah.
Which I would think to say is almost everybody.
Yeah, basically. So yeah, that's just like a gigantic cultural loss. Like I'm not saying like all these MySpace pages were like beautiful, pristine pieces of art. I'm not saying there weren't some very negligible music there that's forgotten to time for a reason, but that was like more than a decade worth of culture. That's more than decades worth of people's dreams, identities, and stuff. And like for this just to be gone, it just shows what a waste the internet can be and like how short-sighted and like callous the people who run the internet can often be. Sorry, they're not very good curators of culture.
Right. Were you able to talk to anyone that currently works at MySpace? Because I would think after that kind of a loss, I'm not sure what's keeping them going.
Yeah, I reached out, didn't hear back, but the current MySpace is such a footnote, it's kind of not barely even worth mentioning.
Yeah, I just went there out of curiosity to myspace.com, and the first headline is like Charlie XCX announces the track list for Crash, which came out in 2022. So
Yeah,
it doesn't seem like they're even trying to update their weird music news story.
yeah. It's a thing that someone owns and they don't know why.
Right. Do you think there's any possibility that TikTok could be the thing that kind of breaks down the corporate interest driven algorithm?
Hard to say. I mean, I think TikTok is good for breaking individual songs and breaking memes. I just don't think there's quite the level of immersion necessary to help a band actually have a career through TikTok. But I do at least like how chaotic it is. I like the fact that it does cut through the more algorithm driven experience we get from Spotify, where it's like this is the most palatable music around, so we'll force feed what's already popular to you. I like the fact that TikTok circumvents that, and I like the fact that TikTok, like MySpace and like Tumblr, can serve as a sanctuary for teenagers who are maybe struggling with their sexuality, mental health, or this or that, and they need some sort of resources. So I overall view TikTok as a force for good, even if it's not quite what I would want out of a music experience.
Right. All right. Well, yeah, before I get you out of here, is there anything else you want to leave us with as far as where we can find you online, get your book?
Find me at michaelteder.com, MICHAELTE, two D's, ER. And I should have news about a new book soon-ish. And it's been lovely talking with you.
Awesome. Yeah, I appreciate it. Like I said, the book was great. I devoured it very quickly.
Really appreciate that.
But yeah, even if you're not familiar with MySpace, it's a great time capsule of just the growth and evolution of emo and internet culture in general. So it was really cool. I liked it.
Thank you so much. And to you or to anyone else who's listening, if you like the book, authors love nice reviews on Amazon and Goodreads.com.
Okay, awesome. Yeah, I appreciate it. Thanks for coming on.
Thanks, man. Thank you so much. Really appreciate it.
For more, visit internetkilledthevideostore.com.